Let me appreciate the Jomo Kenyatta University Christian Union for inviting me to speak to you today. It's a great privilege. I just realized this morning that I haven't been here for quite a while, but I am thankful to God for the privilege. I'm born again. My name is Oliver Kisaka. And the subject I was invited to speak on is giving. I have got a lot to say on the subject of giving, but I will try to say what I can say in this session. Let me begin by highlighting that God, it is written in the book of Genesis, chapter 1 and chapter 2, chapter 1 verse 28, and God blessed them, talking about Adam and Eve, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth." And 2 verse 15, "And the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to dress it." When God created man, he did so. He created him as the only being that was created in the image of God. To be created in the image of God is the most special thing that any of us possesses today. Because we are not created like other beings. I was sorry when we were meeting in Rwanda, an interreligious group of leaders, and we are tackling the issue of insecurity and the issue of terrorism. And I stood up and said, if we really want terrorists to stop killing other human beings, let's help them realize that when you kill a fellow human being, you are killing the image of God. I was terribly shocked when the Muslim man stood up and said they do not believe that we are created in the image of God. I was so shocked. So shocked. In fact, I almost left the meeting because I realized we were not discussing anything. How can you deal with people who see other human beings as nothing? For us as God's people, we have been taught that every human being is special, not because of the money they have, but because of who they are. They are created in the image of God. And when God created Adam, he had created a lot of things which to human beings today are very special. If you read the book of Genesis chapter 2, between verse 7 and verse 14, God describes the garden where he put man. There is no place in Kenya that compares to that. It was a place with 4 rivers flowing. The gold of that area, we are told, is good gold. And you didn't need to go underground to get it. It was exposed as the waters passed. How would you like that for a garden? That as you sit in your balcony, there's a river flowing and there's gold. There are even other metals that you have never heard about, like bdellium and others. That's where God put Adam. When today I want to put up a home for myself, I think of this lush place, perhaps an acre of land, fantastic house. I direct pipe water, put it in that environment, create, what are they called? Springs. Who are the architects in the house? So that water can be going up and coming down. Human beings trying to imagine the creation of a nice environment for themselves. Adam did not need to imagine it. When God created him, he put him there. He thinks very highly about us. And he tells Adam and Eve, I have created all things in their magnificence, in their order, but I have created you to rule over them, to be in control, to have dominion, to take care of it. At creation, there was no money. God did not create money. There were only persons, and they were created for two reasons. The first reason, to worship the Lord. To worship God. To worship God. No human being can be normal without worshiping God. It doesn't matter who they are. If you don't worship the living God, you worship something else. Human imagination about deity is miserable. There are fellows, I'm told, they imagine who God is. Their best idea of who God is, a cow. They worship cows. Their best imagination of who God is. Isaiah writes and says, foolish man goes out into the forest, cuts a tree, carries it on his shoulder, comes and hammers it with a hammer, and then falls down to worship it. You know, do you understand the folly of humanity? Some fellows discover a few things about God's life on earth. They call themselves philosophers. They declare themselves atheists. God's verdict. Somebody calling himself an atheist, declaring there is no God. Psalms 14 verse 1. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. You see, if Oliver calls you a fool, you may escape. Because my judgment may be wrong. My friend, if God calls you a fool, if God concludes that you are a fool, you better kneel down, you better crawl and pray. So nobody should fail to worship the living God. You know, the biggest ship that has ever been constructed, luxurious ship, some of you have seen the film, was called the Titanic. I don't know what kind of foolishness gets into human beings so that at the point of their success, they utter statements against God. This one is such a magnificent creation, even God cannot sink it. Why? He was merciful to you. He gave you oxygen. He gave you H2O. He allowed you to live. He gave you the brains to be able to create something magnificent. Why not fall down on your knees and say, Heavenly Father, thank you for giving this kind of wisdom to men. You now say, this one, even God cannot sink it. You know, there are chemists in the house. What did God send to destroy the Titanic? It was made of iron. God sent ice. It hit an iceberg. It did not make one voyage. Why? Because a human being is foolish enough to imagine there is no God. I know you young people, you watch more European football than anybody else watches. I was very shocked to hear somebody called Jose Mourinho say that he was such a fantastic coach that God could not stop him. As we speak now, he is the coach of which team? I don't know whether you hear what I am saying. God created human beings to worship Him. Any human being that does not worship God is a fool. Is a great fool. If God does not allow your breakfast to pass in your neck, you'll be dead. It is that minute. Today you ate breakfast and it passed your throat because God allowed it. He created Adam to worship Him. But He also gave him a task. He said, till the land. The only job given to him on earth is you till the land. Generate your food. Take care of it. All other jobs you see, all these sophisticated things you are studying in JKUAT are meant to support the farmer. I'm telling you. If the farmer stops producing food today, there will be no JKUAT. But what happens? Human beings take over management of systems that are supposed to help the farmer, then they create unjust laws that oppress the farmer and nullify his work. The most successful president we have had in this country was the Honorable Kibaki. And it is because he recognized the value of the farmer. In his first year of presidency, he declared that every farmer who produces any food must be paid full money for what they produce. He cut off middlemen. If a farmer produces milk, they buy it at 9 shillings. They sell it at 18 shillings. Kibaki would ask, why? Why should somebody who never produced milk come in between, buy milk at 9 shillings, sell it at 18, make 9 shillings for no sweat? He says that man must be removed. Pay the farmer full 18 shillings. What happened? There was a lot of money in the village. What happened? Farmers could now buy soda, they could buy Blue Band, they could buy sugar. What happened? Industries, all industries in Kenya in Kibaki's time made profit. All of them, without exception. Even those that had been called moribund in the past. Because he understood economics. He understood that if you support the person who produces food, you will get the economy of Kenya moving. Friends, when we talk about giving, we are talking about sustenance. We are talking about survival. Adam was created to till the land. Farming still remains the most important job. It has been, through injustice, made less paying. It has not become less important. Today, there is no shortage of jobs in Kenya. There are enough jobs in Kenya. There is a shortage of integrity. Integrity is a problem. I have a farm right now. Last year I decided not to farm. Why? Because the previous year I farmed. And when I send money to the fellow I have employed, he thinks he's being very wise by diverting some of the money and not putting the fertilizer that is required. But I am also an economist. If I put in 10,000 shillings, I expect to get 20,000. If I put in 10,000 and I get 8,000, I understand that I have lost 2,000. Not even to mention his salary. So the next year he says, are we planting this year? I say, no. We are sucking. You did not understand that by being away, you are being employed. You had an opportunity to take care of this chance that I had given you to make me get a profit so that I can pay you and have some bread for myself. Now that you can't make, you are not clever enough. You are not steward enough. You have no integrity. Let the farm stay, because other people are producing maize. I can buy maize. Instead of spending 10,000 to get 8,000, I can keep the 10,000 and buy maize at production. I don't know whether you understand what I'm talking about. There are enough jobs in Kenya. The problem is that there's no integrity. Young people today have been taught that the most important thing is money. They are looking for money by hooks and by crooks. You meet this young girl, she's only 19 years. She looks as if she's 30. What has happened? You meet this young man has been in university for the last 10 years, looking for money, destroyed himself. Very important that you understand, God did not create money. Money was created as a means, as a convenience. In other words, farmers were doing well. So, this farmer has got 20 goats. He has eaten goats, he's tired. Somebody else is there, has potatoes. He has eaten potatoes, he's tired. The one with potatoes comes to the one with goats, says, look, how many potatoes do you need for me to have one of your goats? It's called barter exchange. And then they sit down and wonder, now, are we going to be carrying sacks of potatoes like this? If I want to eat a goat, I must go to Marsabit. Why don't we have a central market somewhere where Marsabit people can bring their goats and where Nyeri people can bring their potatoes? But if I bring my potatoes and the man from Marsabit has not come with his goats, what do I do? We give you a piece of paper that shows that you brought your potatoes. Equivalent to a lorry of potatoes, equivalent to 20 goats, equivalent to 5 loaves of bread. You know, the piece of paper, if you take the money, I don't know, some of you have never thought, you think money is gold. The money you have in your pocket is a piece of paper. It is like this one. It has actually been printed the way I printed. I printed these notes in the morning. It's just that I didn't print them to be legal tender. See? Yeah? And I'm not allowed to do so. Because there's a special company which is printing legal tender as we speak. It is printing paper, but that paper is different from this paper because that paper has been stamped and approved by the Kenyan government to stand for goods and services. So the money that you have is indicative of goods and services. It has no value in itself. And people need to hear that. Is a foolish man who steals 5 billion shillings from Kenyans and stashes it in a bank. He's extremely foolish. He does not understand that today, if a situation happened in Kenya, and God forbid it does, Kenya money can reduce value to zero. You know, those who are in the morning, I showed them. This is 200,000 Zimbabwe dollars. See? 200,000 Zimbabwe dollars. It can't buy you a sweet in Zimbabwe. You know, when I took this, Dr. Kiman, when I took this, I was actually being clever. I was thinking, Zimbabwe will recover and their money will get back. When it gets back, I will be 200,000 rich. So I said, let me keep it. But I have waited for a long time. Zimbabwe currency, as we speak, has been suspended. In Zimbabwe, you buy in dollars. You buy in yen, Chinese yen. When you go to a supermarket in Zimbabwe, they don't take Zimbabwe dollars. It is useless. So you imagine somebody had stolen 5 billion Zim dollars and kept them on his account. What does he have today? Nothing. It is really stupid, actually. Please pardon me for using these strong words. This is the problem of corruption in Kenya. Somebody has been given money to help young people, stashes it away for themselves. For what? You can only drive one car at a time. You can only wear one pair of shoes at a time. You can only eat a quarter a loaf of bread at a time. You know, when you steal this money, keep it away, keep other people hungry who are supposed to be benefiting for it. Are you not foolish? Because the real wealth is land. The real wealth is gold, minerals created by God. The real wealth is you. You are the wealth. Take two parents. One of them decides to build houses, not educate his children. Another one sacrifices the houses, does not build any, educates his children. I can predict without closing my eyes. The one who educated his children will live in houses. The one who bought houses will bury his children. So money was created to be a convenience. Soon, human beings began to realize that this thing is very powerful. When you have money, in fact, even this morning, those of you that have money are unable to sit in the library. That's why the library gets full when you are exams. People are broke and exams are coming. At the beginning of term, when people have money, they don't sit in the library. You just hear them saying, I want to dash to Juja. I want to dash to Thika. I want to dash to wherever. Money keeps talking. It tells you, my friend, you are not like ordinary people. Do something. And that's how we treat each other. If you come and you don't have it, we despise you. We don't remember you are created in the image of God. This is legal tender. It represents goods and services, period. God created us, we created money. Now we, instead of worshiping the Creator, we are worshiping the money. And so God speaks in the book of Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 to verse 21. He says, do not lay up for yourselves treasure on earth, where moth and rust destroy. What does moth and rust mean? At the beginning of last year, the Kenya shilling was 85 to the dollar. There was a wise man who has done saving, and saving is a good principle. I'm not against saving. I'm not against saving 5 billion shilling if you have worked for it. I'm against stealing it, taking it away from other people. It is robbery. But the one who had 1 million shillings, and God bless him for his ingenuity, when it was 85 to the dollar, without writing a single check from his account, how much money did he have at the end of the year? Those who know. Equivalent to about 850,000. He had not used a single shilling from his account. The account is reading 1 million. The real value in the world is 850. Why? The dollar has risen from 85 to 105. The car you could have bought with that same million last year, you can't buy it now. You need to look for more money. And Jesus speaks and says, you human beings, what's wrong with you? Why don't you understand these things? He says, don't store it on earth where moth and rust destroy. He says, keep it in heaven. Because where your heart is, that's where your treasure is. You know, if you are here this morning, if by any chance you remember that the 5,000 shillings which you have, you did not keep it, you did not lock it in your box. If you remember that now, nobody can stop you here. You just wake up like you've been called by mobile phone and walk out, but we know where you are going is to ensure that the 5,000 shillings is not on the table. Because where your heart is, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So Jesus, in this discourse, then declares and says, if your eye is single, then your whole body is full of light. If your eye is blind, then your whole body is full of blindness. And if what you think is light is blindness, how great is that blindness? What is he saying? He's saying when you don't understand these things, you take money, keep it in your pocket, take it out, admire it, count it, put it back, walk around feeling like you have money, get to another point, write, take it out, count it. So Jesus says this fellow has a gross misunderstanding of the priorities of the kingdom. He says you can't serve God and money. He says, look at the birds, look at the flowers. They neither toil nor spin, but your heavenly Father takes care of them. Are you not more precious than those animals? So then he concludes by saying, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things that you seek shall be added unto you. The things which are important to you, believe me this morning, are important to God. Very important. The order of importance is what he does not agree with. Your heart has long shifted from him to the money. I did not come to accuse you. I'm just preaching as a preacher. You may be doing your course you are doing because of money. Your real heart wanted you to play football, but you are told this one has money. And there's nothing wrong with positioning yourself to be able to function in a vibrant economy. I'm just saying, if your heart worships money, you will be a frustrated human being. How many billions can give you joy and peace? How many people, their children today are in court, and the lawyers are making sure the cases do not end? The father left them 750 million shillings. The lawyers have so far charged fees 250 million. And they are not stopping the cases because they are earning bread. And the people are still fighting. Why don't these foolish children stop and tell the lawyers, stop, withdraw the case? We have already lost 250 million. Divide between themselves. There are 15 of them. Every one of you gets 30 million. At least get something of our father's inheritance. They will get zero. Because everybody wants to have it all. Judas thought by selling Christ, he'd be rich. When Christ was hung on the cross, he held the 30 pieces of silver and they became too hot. Useless. What can this do? He no longer has need for bread. He no longer has need for houses. All those things became useless. He went to the temple, threw back the money, nobody wanted it back. He just hung himself. Seek first the kingdom. Redirect your thoughts. Why are you living? Why do you exist on earth? What is the purpose of your existence? Make sure that it is to honor God. That God comes first in everything you do. Let God take the precedence. Let him take the preeminence. You will be shocked that the things that matter to you matter to him. He thinks about you every day. You are alive today because of the grace of God. I am alive here purely because of the grace of God. So it's important for us to understand that, therefore, lay not for yourselves treasures upon earth where moth and rust corrupt and destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. A shift from mammon-centered approach to life to a God-centered approach. God sustains his creation. God is able to sustain you. It is this faith that I would like us to tap in. When Paul commented on these matters in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6 to verse 10, he said, "But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain that we can carry nothing out. And having food and clothes, let us therewith be content. But they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and prejudice. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from their faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows." You see, I know, I am aware, speaking from this pulpit, because of past experience, that I have already caused a major crisis in your heart right now by what I have said. And I think the crisis should exist, because it's the only way we are going to stop madness. What is the alternative approach? Two passages in the Corinthian text are amazing. If we were to interpret the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 1 to verse 15, and 2 Corinthians chapter 8 in the light of what Jesus taught in Matthew, it takes on an interesting dimension. Let's go to 2 Corinthians chapter 9. See, some people think, like the skit say, that when you come to church, we are coming to take away your money. Okay? Okay? We give for 3 reasons. The first reason is we worship God. Giving is worship. The second reason is that when you give, you heal your heart from idolatry. It is antiseptic against idolatry. You have a choice between God and money. What do you choose? If you choose to keep money, you have chosen money, you will not find God present. And you will be shocked that you don't find Him present. But He has already told you, you can't serve both. Between money and God, what is your choice? I will explain that as we go along. The third reason we give is that we make available resources for God's priority. God always has priorities. We will know whether your heart and mind seeks God first when God's priority arises. Because if God's priority is to pay fees for an orphan child, He speaks loudly enough for me to hear that an orphan child has no fees. When He knows that I'm interested in buying a bicycle, He knows. He speaks loudly for me to hear. Like Isaiah overheard the Lord asking, whom shall we send? He speaks loudly enough for Isaiah to hear. And for Isaiah to be wise enough to say, here I am, Lord, send me. If he doesn't say it, another Isaiah will be found. Second Corinthians chapter 9. Paul writing to the Corinthians says, for as touching ministering to the saints, it is superfluous for me to write unto you. What does that mean? He was raising funds for the church in Jerusalem. Because of extreme persecution, the church in Jerusalem had come to the point where all their sources of funds had been dried up and they needed support from other brethren. And so Paul, as he goes around preaching, for various reasons which I can't get into this morning, is telling the Corinthians, can you please stand with the Jerusalem church? And the Corinthians were excited. They said, look, we have heard you, we are going to raise funds, and we are going to be stand with the Jerusalem church. For purposes of our discussion this morning, the Corinthian church was in the second largest city of the Roman Empire. They were the upper class of society, or people of means. They gave a promise. They said, we will give 1,000,000 shillings. They raised 100,000, gave him, and said the rest will come. Paul is very excited, leaves Corinth, so he says, and moves on to Macedonia. He says, for I know the forwardness of your mind, for which I boast to them of Macedonia, that Achaia, which is Corinth, was ready a year ago, and your zeal hath provoked many. He goes to Macedonia, and he tells them, can you imagine, we have just been to Corinth, and when I told them about the needs in Jerusalem, they took the matter so seriously. They are raising 1,000,000 shillings. They have even given me 100,000. Which church was the church of Philippi? Chapter 8, verse 1 to verse 5. This is what Paul says. He says, moreover, brethren, we do you to wit of the grace of God bestowed on the churches of Macedonia. How that in a great trial of affliction, the abundance of their joy and their deep poverty abounded unto the riches of their liberality. Poverty is a temporary condition of absence of Kenya shillings in the pocket. Okay? Kenya shillings are generated by people like us, created in the image of God. The fellow who is the president today, His Excellency the President, has exactly, sorry about that, I did not mean to be careless in my speech. His Excellency the President has exactly the same brain, the same nose, the same mouth, the same hands, the same feet, like ours. Been to school, like we have been to school. So the fact that you don't have Kenya shillings doesn't mean you can't be the president. Why? Because there's a common factor. That common factor is that both of you are created in the image of God. You have dignity. You have inherent dignity irrespective of how much money you have in your pocket. It doesn't matter whether you come from a poor background or a rich background. If because you come from a rich background, you despise the poor, sorry for my strong language this morning, you are acting foolishly. You are dealing with a human being who is created in the image of God. Today, they don't have shillings. Tomorrow, they will be the owner of that company that is creating a product that has never been seen in the world. And you will be ashamed talking to them because when you had money, you despised them. And Paul says, the Macedonians, in great trial and affliction, the abundance of their joy, their deep poverty, abounded unto the riches of their liberality. For to their power, listen to this, for to their power I bear record, and beyond their power they were willing of themselves, praying us with much entreaty that we would receive the gift and take upon us the fellowship of the ministering to the saints. What does he mean by that? Paul said, dear people, when I was sharing with you about the Corinthian story, I was not sharing so that you give me money. I know you are in difficult situations. I know you are going through trial. So, it was not because I wanted money. Please, just keep it. They said, Paul, who do you take us to be? Why do you call us the poor? Why do you call us the below the poverty line? Don't you realize we are created in the image of God? Don't you realize we have received the grace of God that has come to us through Jesus Christ? Don't you realize that we also work and can give? Africa needs great healing, and I pray young people like yourselves are going to take a different approach to this country. Africa needs to be healed from the curse of poverty consciousness. A thousand of you seated here. 1,000 of you. If you wanted to raise 1 million shillings, you only need to give 1,000 shillings. 1,000 shillings is how many sodas? Is how many loaves of bread? But something has told us, you are from Africa, you are from Africa, you are the poor. You are the poor. If a white man walks here, we don't ask him, which job do you do? Which training do you have? We just see money, money has come. Poverty mentality. After we have raised money, what do we use it to do? To buy shoes of 7,000 shillings? To buy skirts of 10,000? To buy useless things which can be eaten by rats. You see, when you pledge and you don't honor your pledge, you know it's very easy for us to say, well, what a guy. Paul did not allow it to stay. Why? It was a deadly choice between God and money. You had God speaking to you. God knows your circumstance. Nobody forced you. You wrote down on a piece of paper and said, I'm going to give 100 shillings. It was a free will. What has happened that you have decided to keep the money rather than to keep God? If the presence of money to you means security, how much more the presence of God? How come when we have money in our pocket, we swing around with confidence? When we have no money, we walk like ducks that have been rained on. You know, God looks and says, my goodness, what did money do to these people? When they have it, they swing around with joy. When they don't have it, they swoon. Isn't my presence anything? Isn't the presence of God anything? So Paul says, we will not let it go, because if we let it go, it will kill you. If you choose money over God, you will die. You'll be like Ananias and Sapphira. It will kill you. So what should you do? Jesus teaches us and says, please, learn the art of how to transfer your treasure from earth to heaven. How do you do that? Always put God first. How do you do that? That is what Paul is explaining here. In verse 6, he says, if you sow sparingly, you will harvest sparingly. If you sow bountifully, you will harvest bountifully. It's not easy to understand that verse until you go to verse 10. Shall we go to verse 10? Now, he who supplies seed to the sower, he who supplies seed to the sower. Now, as I stand here now, he who supplies seed to the sower, that clause is in present continuous tense. It means, as I stand here, he has supplied and he is continuing to supply. We are alive because of the grace of God. If you have had this breakfast this morning, you have experienced the grace of God in breakfast. If you are breathing, you have experienced the grace of God in life. In other words, he is a generous God. He is always supplying. As I stand here, he has supplied. Now, he who supplies seed to the sower. When he writes this, he says he supplies seed. He doesn't say to the doctor, to the teacher, to the mechanic. He uses a noun that contains the expectation of what should happen when the seed is received. The sower could be a doctor, the sower could be a teacher, the sower could be a preacher. In other words, he supplies you with seed. Depending on how you sow the seed, he determines to give you more. Because he knows that seed has life. Seed will produce seed and bread. Bread does not have life. Bread supplies energy. How many physicists are in the house, or is it chemists? When you eat bread, through a few chemical processes, it generates energy and warmth for your body. After that, the balance goes out. That bread is gone. But if you take seed and put it in the ground, it has life. It will produce more seed and more bread. So what is God's intention? In one verse, he talks about seed twice and talks about bread once. Why does he say that after supplying seed to the sower, he also gives you bread for food? It's because he knows the average Kenyan has capacity to eat the seed. We are in the habit of eating the seed. And we rationalize. We smash the bread. After we are through with the bread, we negotiate about the seed. And God is saying, wait a minute. I thought these are university graduates. What about seeds don't they understand? And so, in inviting us to give, I want you to listen to this very carefully. The corruption that is in this country right now tells us, give so that you may get rich. It is not true. Why do we give? It is because he has already given. As I stand here, I already have. I have been given. You know, when you think about that verse, there is nobody, not a single one of us, who can't give. Nobody. Not even the street child. The street child who has had breakfast this morning on the streets, worth 20 shillings, can actually look for 2 shillings. Go before the Father and say, Father, I am in extremely difficult circumstances, but I'm alive. I just want to thank you. I just want to give thanks. I just want to give thanks.
Giving is an opportunity for worship. It's an opportunity to give back to the supplier. It's an opportunity to give thanks. And amazingly, he links giving to righteousness. Will enlarge the harvest of your righteousness. People who give, people who prioritize God in their lives, have much less problems than people who don't. People who get tempted to steal money, get tempted to steal because they think money can protect them. People who give to God have long learned to give thanks to God as their sustainer. They never need to steal. So I have published a book, it's called The Grace of Giving. And in this book, I have put a subtitle, Growing in Faith, Integrity, and Community. I believe we can heal this country from tribalism just by giving. Because you get back connected back to the Father. You don't need a tall relative to do anything for you. The Father is your tall relative. Okay, having seen that, we are almost. Okay, let's now go to verse 6. The others, this is the most critical. If you understand this one, you will now make sense of the rest. Verse 6. He says this, therefore, Paul is urging the Corinthians not to fall back on their willingness. Why? Because their willingness is an opportunity for them to sow seed. God has given to you, give it back. It is being sown in the kingdom. Why? Because there are kingdom priorities. There is business God is doing. We say we are very clever, but it's God's provision. He has put another law called friction. Friction is the reason you can walk. You see people walking as models around because of friction. It is a principle of God. When it comes to dealing with money, God supplies wisdom. He says, when God has blessed you, if you sow sparingly, you will harvest sparingly. If you sow bountifully, you will harvest bountifully. All right. Yes. You will harvest bountifully. This is the principle that is at work. This is God's responsibility. Verse 7. What is your responsibility? Verse 7. Every man as you have decided in your heart. God has given you two choices, my friend. Either you be in the sparing category or you be in the bountiful category. What is amazing to me is that most people, without faith, choose to be in the sparing category. The sparing category means you never have enough. Your faith never measures up. You never have peace about your issues. In the kiosk, una deni. In the school, una deni. In the work, una deni. You go to sleep, you are worried. He has told you, I have given you seed. If you have seeds worth 1,000 and you choose to sow 100, that is called sparing. If you choose to be sparing, you will experience life in a sparing way. He has told you. You see, the sparing category are the recipients. They are the proposal writers. The bountiful category are the donors. They are the ones who receive proposals. Now, which category would you like to be in? The category that writes proposals or the category that receives proposals? Jesus said, if your eyes can see. I want to, even when you read chapter 9 verse 10, he says, when you sow, he will increase your store of seed. Why? He is trying to shift you and me from the category of recipients to the category of donors. His grace, all the time, he's supplying because he hopes that we can get transformed. When we need instruments, send the chairman to the US. Why? Who is he going to meet in the US? Are they not farmers like us? Teachers like us? Students like us? Why do you think the students of Harvard CU should raise money to send it to JQuad CU? Why? Why should students of JQuad CU raise money and support Harvard CU? It is this self-defeating mentality that we have brought on ourselves that destroys the blessing of God in our lives, causes us to be untrustworthy with resources, takes us in the direction of idolatry, makes us depend on money instead of depending on God. So the problem is not God. God is able to do what? To make all grace abound towards you. This verse was extremely significant to me. That he asks you to give money, but when he responds with more grace. Grace is a much stronger currency than Kenya shillings, than dollars, than pounds. Grace, when you enter Uganda, it produces Uganda shillings. There will be cases where what you are looking for is food. You don't need money. God gives you food. What you are looking for is transport. God gives you transport. God will command somebody to buy your air ticket whom you don't know. What you wanted is transport. And God is able to make his grace abound towards you so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. Dear students of JQuad CU, I have been involved in advocacy in this country for a long time. But I decided to study, to try and understand why the Christian community is under a target all the time. And I realized of the many problems we face, one of them is how we deal with money. We are so worried about our sustenance that we are doing everything we can to keep all the money we can from the Lord. But the young man with the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes was different from us. My brother here was observing that when he gave the 5 loaves and 2 fishes, it was in the evening. He was given lunch by his mother. He found Jesus so interesting. He had not eaten it by evening. Jesus is looking for something to feed the people. The disciples tell him 8 months of salary is not enough. What happens? One of them says, but I've seen a young man here with 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Says, bring them, put them in my hands. The young man loves Jesus, releases his lunch. If you were Jake, what student, what would you have risen? This is the last meal. The young man put it in the hands of Jesus. What happened? Jesus gave thanks to the Father. What happened? Over 10,000 people were fed. What was the priority of God? The priority of God at that hour was to feed the people. How was he going to feed the people? He was going to use resources that are available among the people. Only one young man was willing to release his loaves and his fish. How many baskets did he carry home? 12. I pray God gives you understanding. God bless you.